Hi, welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to be addressing the article that Jeff Edgars wrote in the Washington Post today on September 30th. Jeff's the same gentleman who wrote the article on the MOFI debacle, so to speak, about Mike Esposito at the In-Groove going to Sebastopol MOFI and getting the engineers to discuss the introduction of digital into their supposed all analog mastering chain. So that's kind of old news, but this article is entitled "The Search for the Perfect Sound." And the subtitle is "Vinyl is Booming in the Digital Age, so why does the best way to listen feel just out of reach?" Well, we've talked about prices and things of that nature, but this is more about sound and the pursuit, so to speak. And so this is broken up into 6 sections. The first one is about a guy named Tom Port who runs a outfit called Better Records, and they basically scout the best record capability, in other words, the best sound that they think exists on vinyl. And they do that through listening tests. So basically, they go through a lot of listening tests and they end up coming up with what they feel is the best available pressing of a particular title that's out there, and then they sell it. And if you go to their website, you'll see the records that they have. They're fairly high priced. We're talking hundreds and hundreds of dollars, if not more. And so basically he does the shopping for you, or he does the play testing or play grading for you and his team, which is fine. That's a business. I understand that. For me, the question becomes one of, well, what sound is being chosen? In other words, everybody's hearing is different. Everybody's system is different. And I understand that they believe what they're getting is the best in a comparison, and maybe it is. Have they looked at everything that's out there is one question. But one thing that really got to me, I think, in the sense that it was just such a raw statement, is when he talked about Analogue Productions and the product that's being put out there. He says they've never made a single good sounding record since AP's founding in 1991. And obviously Chad had some choice words to say about that. But, you know, that is an interesting take, because I think a lot of us have bought albums that were done through Analogue Productions and compared them to other pressings we had, and believe many of those represent some of the best things that are out there for that particular title. So we can't all go and find the perfect one. I mean, everything that he says here, like every record that comes off is like a snowflake. It's different. Well, okay, even if I buy that theory, the question becomes, is the difference enough to hear? Is the difference enough to pay X amount of dollars for? Well, when we have someone who goes through the care that someone like Analogue Productions does, or some of these other labels that do releases, Craft Recordings, and others, for example, they are trying to bring us the best that can be done with what they have technology-wise, capability-wise, and in some cases staying analog, which Tom here really appreciates more himself. But does he hear the same as the customer hears? That's always going to be a huge variable. So to stamp it as the absolute best to me is a bit of a presumption to me. And to make such a blanketed statement like he did about a label that has the integrity that Analogue Production has, to me, it really smacks a bit of someone who's really gone a bit over the top and has in fact adorned themselves as the individual who has the premium and premier knowledge and ears, which again, we all have different hearing. So I don't know that really works for me, for that to be quite an absolute thing. I'm sure there are people who are willing to pay the money to get the best of what they think is out there from this organization. And again, that's a legitimate business and that's fine. But from my perspective, when you start to get into some of the comments that were made here, I think that it actually demeans the product of what's being sold here. In other words, someone who couldn't find anything good in a catalog such as that probably is not necessarily looking at it from an objective perspective. They are, in fact, looking at it. And if they said too much that Acoustic Sound / Analogue Productions has the best of the best, why use them? You can just go buy the product directly from Acoustic Sounds and get those products directly. So there is a bit of competition, I think, that is present in this perspective. And I think it just needs to be called out a bit. So this article is broken up into 6 parts, and the final part is really the most interesting to me because you kind of get worn down reading the other parts, which have some interesting tests to A/B tracks to see if you think it's a vinyl or a digital or a high res. I think those are kind of cool. But we get to track 6 and it starts to focus back toward the MOFI story because it talks about Michael Fremer, because Jeff Edgars had been invited by Michael to come to his house and listen to his system, which Jeff ended up doing in the end. And so they get together and basically what comes out in this really is about the way that the whole MOFI thing came out. He wanted to, the writer wanted to know what it was about his article that most upset Fremer. And it says here, what bothered Fremer the most was that I wrote that MOFI's secret would not have been revealed without Esposito, to which Fremer is quoted to say, it would have taken longer, but I was on the case. I would have gotten to the bottom of it. That's what I do. So, whatever the approach and temperament, he says, when you sit with Fremer listening to music, that's what clearly drives him. But you can see here, of course, there is, in fact, this situation where, in fact, Michael Fremer feels like he was going to be the one to try to break this, and that's not the way it ended up happening. And unfortunately, it came out the way it did, but it came out the way it needed to, and the internet moves at lightning speed, and you can't sit around and wait for these things to come out. So it's interesting to me, if you read the rest of this, that really it is about this, basically this thing journalistically, where Michael has been in the world of vinyl for decades now, and that was a big story to break, no doubt. Journalistically, it probably would have been much more a concise interview. It all came out kind of in pieces. And then, of course, Jim Davis came out and made the statement basically saying, yeah, this is what we were doing, and codifying that for the record, so to speak, no pun intended. So it does show here that, there was some of this going on, and it's kind of funny because it comes out here in this article in the 11th hour of the article almost as an, oh, by the way, moment. But I think it does, in fact, wrap a bit of a bow around some of these things and puts this into perspective, which there have always been in my mind some questions about why this was the way it was and why things happened the way they did and why Michael maybe was so objectionable to the article the way it came out. And then, of course, he came out with a review of some MOFI stuff that he dissed after that. And it's got to be, difficult in that position to not be at the center of that. I understand that. And that is, in fact, it appears to be kind of what it boiled down to in the end. So this article kind of, at the end of the day, kind of brings that to a crescendo to tell that story. And I find it's interesting because it's kind of buried in here at the very, very end. So one other item on the MOFI front is this week, the 4th lawsuit was filed, and this was in California, which has pretty stringent consumer protection laws, filed by a very prestigious civil law firm. So we'll see where this one goes, but certainly the weight of it is growing. Actually, California, Sebastopol is where they are doing the actual mastering process, and where Mike actually did that interview. So it's contextual to the work that's being done. Just another iron in the fire, so to speak. So we'll just see where that all goes. Obviously, MOFI continues to do releases. It seems like they've slowed down on updating their website or adding archive titles. So I think things have cooled off a bit in that area. But we have the Thriller release coming up in November around Thanksgiving. We'll see what the what the outcome of that is. Mike said he heard it and thought it was pretty dynamic. We all can be the judge individually, those of us who are going to get it. For now, we're just going to have to wait and see what happens on all these other fronts. Again, that article has 6 sections. I just covered the first and the last. So if you want to pick it up and check the Washington Post entertainment section, there's some more on vinyl in there as well with some comparison listening, which is pretty interesting. So for now, thanks as always for watching. If you would subscribe, click the button there, the bell with the black icon for getting notifications. And if you'd like it, with a thumbs up or comment, that is always welcome. And so for now, I say again, as always, thanks for watching The Sound of Safe and Sound Texas. Take care, everybody.